Good day. My name is Jamie Howell. I am the Regional Addictions Coordinator for Central Zone Newfoundland Labrador Health Services. Today we're going to be looking at time management and how we can use our time more wisely, more practical, to look at gaining more time back, using our time more effectively, and not having a sense of urgency, moving forward with less stress, less mental fatigue because we're being rushed and not being on time. So let's look at some concepts, share some ideas, some practical tips in the way of managing our time and increasing our mental well-being through this process. So what is time management? So it refers to the process of organizing and planning how we divide the time between different activities. When we do this well, we maximize our time and effectiveness and have better overall mental health because of it. So for a lot of people, they're stressed, they don't have a lot of time. Time is something that's somewhat elusive. We have people with processing issues, ADHD. Some people have neurological difficulties, and time has a real role to play in terms of getting tasks done, staying on task, those types of things. When we're having fun, time tends to fly. When we're doing something that's boring, time seems to slow down. We know those things don't actually affect time, but that's how it impacts our mental health. So moving forward, we're going to look at how to manage things better and hopefully through that process improve our mental health when it comes to managing our time more effectively. So what gets in the way of time management and its effectiveness? So what is your experience? So you can either pause the video at this point, but it's looking at what happens to us in the way that we see time, view time. Are you always on time versus I'm never on time? Just as a test, think of a 30 seconds task and see if you can count it out in your mind. A lot of people tend to be faster, and of course, what they think is 30 seconds is often 20 seconds. So we really struggle with perception of time. In our modern day society, of course, we have clocks, cell phones to help with that. But it can be elusive and things can get in the way. We can get distracted, have fun. All of a sudden, we're forgetting something because our minds have gone somewhere else. So there's times when things are affected because of circumstances. So weather, depending on the weather, can impact things like travel. So all of a sudden we got to account for more time for traveling because of the weather. Other people, sometimes we get to wait for other people. So that affects us and how we do things. Then there's things like owning a car or not owning a car in terms of transportation. Thus not having to wait on other people for a ride, waiting on a bus service or a taxi service. So that impacts our time because if we have our car, we can just jump in and go somewhere a lot of the times versus waiting on other people, waiting on other services. If we don't have the money to own a vehicle or can't own a vehicle or don't drive for some medical reason, then that has a big impact on our time and how we got to manage it. Our health is another one. that we often consider. Quickly or slowly do we do things? Some people with mobility issues, some people are slow getting up in the morning, so therefore anything before 10 o'clock becomes a real struggle to get somewhere because of that process. Likewise, we have people who need to go to bed early. They can't then do certain activities late at night because of their health issues and needing to get their adequate rest. And there's a list for other things depending on your personal situation. For some people, it's childcare, work schedules, those types of things often affect how we use our time. Where does our time go? Well, there's barriers to effective time management. So for some people, anxiety gets in the way. To get anxious, and all of a sudden they need extra time to get ready for something. Perfectionism, people want to do things perfect. Therefore, something that should only take 10 minutes is often 20 or 30 or 40 minutes. Or they do something and the next day they're going back and redoing something else to make it perfect. And that gets in the way then of how long a task actually takes. Being distracted, letting time get away from us by doing fun things and doing the things we need to accomplish that we had set out to do, that gets then delayed. Competing demands. So there are times when we have something planned, something more important happens, thus we got to switch gears and not complete something because something else is more important. And that gets into priorities and setting our direction. Difficulty with organization, and we'll get into some organizational skills, staying on task, getting things done in order, sometimes is a challenge. And in terms of myths about time management, we can plan for as well as we can, but there's things that get in the way, unexpected events. So we can plan and plan well, but then there's things that get in the way because the idea of, we only got so much time, how we spend, we have priorities in our day, but sometimes the priorities get moved because we want to do the fun things, and the fun things then interrupts our flow and our schedule. The benefits of effective time management. So it can increase our productivity, minimize our procrastination, improve our ability to complete tasks, and all of that, of course, reduces our stress level, improves our physical and mental health, improves our sleep if we feel we've got things accomplished and got a good plan for tomorrow, less susceptibility for burnout, improving our confidence and self-esteem. So when we get things done on time, we feel good about things. We got tasks accomplished. From a work perspective, your manager might say, good job, or your boss might say, good job, you got that done. Great, excellent. And with time management, we can actually get time back by being more efficient with certain things. We'll certainly look at some examples moving forward. So imagine that every day you have an account and $86,400 gets put into that account. You can't carry it over to the next day. Once it's gone, it's gone. So how would you spend that money? What would you do? So here we're looking at the concept of time, seconds, as a currency. So how we invest our time is no different than how we invest money in our life. What do? We got rent to pay, bills to pay, house to keep warm, those types of things. But then there's how do we spend our 5 minutes here and there? Do we scroll on social media versus do we put away a few dishes or tidy up? So we're going to look at using time as a currency to look at how we spend our time. So let's break it down into minutes to make it more practical. So there's things you can use. There's journals to track time. How do we spend our time? How do we value our time? There's oftentimes we value something, but we don't spend a lot of time doing it. So we're going to look at this concept a little bit deeper. There's tools to manage time. What do we use? Some people use the calendar. Most workplaces got some sort of scheduler, Outlook, those types of things. But then there's people with whiteboards on their wall in the kitchen, dividing up, children's time, dividing up activities for the weekend, dividing up, doctor's appointments, important things you're doing on your calendar, on your phone, of course. You got a calendar app and to-do lists. So there's different techniques and skills we have and tools to manage our time and become more effective. So we're going to look at these skills bit by bit, but first we're going to pause and look at a YouTube video that looks at some of these things as well in the context of time management and how we think about time and use time accordingly. Just going to end this show and go into the YouTube video.
Over the past 10 years, I have read basically all of the books around productivity and time management. And in that time, there are 10 things that I still use in my life, genuinely use to help make my time management more efficient. Let's talk about them in this video. Tip number 1 is that we absolutely own all of our time. Now, this is like a big one. When I first had this realization, my life genuinely changed because I used to think I don't have time to do stuff. And I don't know where I read it, but I came across this probably like a fortune cookie somewhere, which said something like, at any given moment, you are doing what you most want to be doing. And that was a very empowering thing for me because I was obviously in need of empowerment. And it helped me realize that my time is entirely within my control. Like right now, I'm filming this video because I want to be. Earlier today, I spent 6 hours playing World of Warcraft because that's what I wanted to do. I could not have said I don't have the time to work out today. Instead, it was a case of I'm actively choosing not to make the time to work out today. And so when it comes to time management, step 1 is always to recognize that we are always in control of our own time. Yes, you might have a boss. Yes, you might have parents telling you what to do, but fundamentally, you are in control of your own time and you can choose to do whatever you want with that time. If you don't have the time to do something, that something is just not a priority. Which is fine, but don't pretend like the reason you're not doing it is because you genuinely don't have the time. Point number 2 is the title of this book, Yeah or No, What's Worth Doing? Now, the vibe here, hell yeah or no, it kind of says it all in the title. That when we're young and we don't have very many opportunities in our lives, we should probably say yes to the majority of things that are coming our way. But as soon as we get to a point where we're starting to get more inbound leads than we have time available, we start operating with a hell yeah or no maxim. And the idea there is something is either a hell yes or it's a no. And so if I get an email from someone saying, hey, do you want to do this thing? And I'm thinking, maybe it sounds kind of all right, then my default position is going to be no. If I get an email from someone saying, hey, do you want to do this thing? And I'm like, hell yeah, then I'm going to do the thing.
I turned being underestimated into billions.
And I'm trying to get better at using this principle in my life because even now, my calendar is full of a lot of things where I'm like, yeah, kind of, rather than hell yeah too. And I always regret doing it when it comes down. So hell yeah or no, just learning to be okay with saying no to stuff is another really important principle of time management. Thirdly, there's a tip I picked up from this book called Make Time by Jake Knapp and John Zeratsky. And this tip is called the daily highlight. This is deviously simple. Basically, the idea is that every day we decide this one thing is going to be my highlight of the day. This is the only thing I need to get done today. And on the days where I set a daily highlight, and I try to do this every day, I always get the thing done, and I'm always really happy at the end of the day. But if I have a day where I don't set my daily highlight, then I kind of drown in my to-do list, and I have this just image in my head of like, oh yeah, I need to do this and this and this and that. And it's a lot harder to get stuff done. Whereas on days where I have the daily highlight, I have that just one thing that I'm focusing on. You know, this is the most urgent or the most satisfying or the most fun thing I have to do today. And then it just really, really helps with my time management. Tip number 4 for time management is to use a to-do list. And these days I use a physical to-do list with this analog by Ugmonk. It's very nice. It's like you get these like note cards, and then you get this like wooden thing, and you like put the note card in the thing, and it looks like this. And that means like every morning, once I figured out what my daily highlight is, I make a list of the other stuff that I have to do that day, and I shove it on a list, and then I tick them off and cross them off with physical pen as I go throughout my day. It doesn't really matter what system you use for a to-do list, but again, there's a general principle of productivity, which is that our brain is for having ideas, not for holding them. And a big part of why we let stuff slip through the cracks when it comes to managing our time and managing our productivity is because we haven't written them down. And so anytime I need to do something, I write it down into an app. These days I use Roam. But then when I figure out my daily to-do list, it's all based on this analog system by Ugmonk, which is very nice. And it's kind of cool having a physical to-do list in front of me that I can cross things off of, and it just feels nice. And yeah, even at work, when I'm working as a doctor, I use physical to-do lists to manage my patient list, to manage my list of tasks. There's something incredibly satisfying about crossing something off, which you just don't get when you use an app. Principle number 5 for time management is the concept of time blocking. Apparently, this is something that Elon Musk does all the time. And basically, the idea there is anytime we need to do something, we put a block for it in our calendar. So I don't like doing this for absolutely everything because I'm a bit of a waste man. And I think the more time I spend managing my productivity system, the less time I spend actually getting stuff done. And then it's just all completely pointless. But the one thing that I always schedule into my calendar at the start of the day is my daily highlight. So if I've decided my daily highlight is filming this video, usually, well, I'll try my best to schedule it into my calendar at the time where I know I'm going to film the video. If my daily highlight is call my grandma, I will literally schedule it into my calendar. If my daily highlight is make changes to my website, I will schedule it for a block in my calendar. And that's like really nice and reassuring because it means that that one thing that I've decided is really, really important is always going to get done because it's always on the schedule. And then if I need to move it around, I'll move it around if something comes up, but at least it's there on the schedule by default. And this thing where you combine the daily highlight with time blocking it in the calendar is just incredibly useful. Everyone always kind of thinks that like, oh, but only one thing a day, don't you have to do more than that? And yeah, you do kind of have to do more than that in most of our lives. But imagine if every single day for the next year, you could actually do the one thing, the one most important thing to do that day. You'd make a hell of a lot of progress over the course of the year, and it would just be absolutely game-changing. Principle number 6 is related to something called Parkinson's law, which is that work expands to fill the time that we allocate to it. So if I have to film a YouTube video in a day, and I give myself the whole day to film that YouTube video, inevitably, it's going to take all day to film the YouTube video. Whereas if I only give myself half an hour or an hour to film the YouTube video, and I fill my day up with other things, then inevitably I get the video done in that small amount of time. And so the actionable advice here is to leverage artificial deadlines. Even when it's something like filming a new course. Like, you know, I'm working on a course for YouTube for beginners where I kind of film and talk you to everything about my YouTube video production process. And this doesn't really have a deadline. Like I could literally do it whenever I want. I don't have to do it. It's a purely optional project. But I've set myself the goal that, okay, you know what? I'm going to film all of this course next weekend. And I've blocked out time in my calendar next weekend to film the course. And that's an artificial deadline, which means the course is going to get done. Whereas if I just had it in my mind or in my to-do list without a deadline, without a schedule, it would just inevitably never ever get done. Point number 7 is one I've started applying recently, and that is having protected time. When you are an entrepreneur and you're like working for yourself and all that kind of stuff, you end up basically being able to set whatever schedule you want. But like if you're like me and you like making connections and making friends with people all around the internet, you get to a point where your day is filled with lots and lots of Zoom calls. And I realized that for me, I need to keep my mornings completely free of any obligations or any Zoom calls. And this has been an absolute game changer because in the morning, that means I can wake up whenever I want. Usually it's 8:30 these days. And it means that for a solid like 4 hours at least, I've got uninterrupted time where I can do whatever I want. So these days I'm working on writing my book. And so the morning is my protected time for writing. But even on days where I'm not working on the book, it's just genuinely so nice to have that like time slot where I can think about the business or plan some more videos or do the things that help move me forward in my work career. And sometimes, if I'm not really feeling it, I'll just decide, you know what, I'm going to use this protected time to play World of Warcraft or to just kind of relax and read a book on the sofa. So if you're interested in better ways to managing your time, I would recommend figuring out what your protected time is going to be. time that is just for you and you alone, or World of Warcraft, and not for anyone else, where no one is allowed to book something in your schedule. All right, principle number 8 is delegation. Now, this one is a little bit weird, because normally when you say the word delegate, people imagine that, oh, well, I can't afford to delegate something. I don't have enough money to delegate, to hire someone. And sure, that's probably true, but the way that I think of it, even when this YouTube channel wasn't successful, was that, like, what is actually the dollar value of my time? How much is my time actually worth? And when it came to running my business, I decided
The divorce rate in the United States after hitting a 40-year low is up 15%.
Marriage rates don't go
that, okay, my time is worth £20 an hour or $25 an hour. And that means that anything I'm doing that I don't enjoy, that I can outsource to someone, that I can delegate for less than $25 an hour, I absolutely should do that. And that principle of delegation has encouraged me to get a cleaner, which has been great, because now we have someone who comes in to clean the house every other week, which means I don't have to do it myself. And back in the day when I was building my businesses from the ground up, and there was lots of things that needed to be done, like data entry or things like that, I was able to delegate those to freelancers in like the Philippines or in Bangladesh or in India through Upwork.com or Fiverr.com. And like paying them like $7 an hour is an amazing like wage for someone for work in the Philippines. But it was fantastic for me because it freed up my time to do things that were adding more value to the business and to my life than doing data entry, for example. And so whatever your circumstances are, I'd encourage you to think about what is the dollar value of your time, and potentially, if you want, can you delegate stuff that's cheaper than that to other people potentially. Tip number 9 for time management is to try and automate scheduling as much as possible. Now that we're in the world of like Zoom calls and like chatting to people over the internet basically every day, I found I was wasting a lot of time in scheduling back and forth, where I'd be like, hey, I want to talk to you, but like, are you free this time Pacific time, this time Eastern time, this time British Standard Time, all this kind of stuff. And we'd go back and forth with emails for like a solid 10 days before anything would get done. But then I discovered an app called Calendly, and Calendly is great. It's free for like the free version. I pay for the pro version these days. Not sponsoring this video or anything like that, unfortunately. Calendly, if you're watching this, let me know. But the idea behind Calendly is you can literally send someone a link, and it has like all of your availability, and they can just book a slot in your calendar. Now this feels a little bit weird to do initially. It feels like a bit of a power move that, hey, book a slot on my calendar. But anytime I get a Calendly link from someone, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so grateful, because this has literally saved me 20 minutes of my life, time that I'm never going to get back, in not having to worry about scheduling back and forth emails. Even sometimes these days when it comes to like catching up with friends, I just send them a Calendly link and I'm like, look, hey man, I'm really sorry, but like, you know, here's a Calendly link. I know we're never going to talk because the schedules are never going to align, but if there's a time that works for you, click on this link, and you book the time and we have a call. And it's nice because I've caught up with so many more friends in the last few months through using Calendly links than I did in the last like 3 years of having to schedule back and forth with WhatsApp messages. And finally, principle number 10 for time management, and this is something I've only recently started to appreciate, which is that like when you're like a productivity nerd and you're interested in like efficiency and getting more done, it's very easy for us to get to the end of the day and to just feel chronically dissatisfied with what we've accomplished. Like at the end of the day, it's like, oh, well, I filmed 1 video today, but I could have filmed 5 videos. What's wrong with me? I'm such a waste man, and kind of internally beating ourselves up about this. But one thing I've started to kind of tell myself recently is that I can choose to be satisfied at the end of the day. At the end of this day, I'll have filmed this video. I was planning to film 3 more videos, but I didn't get around to doing those. That's fine. I filmed 1. I can choose to be satisfied with what I've done, and that's all good. And like it doesn't change how much work I've done by me beating myself up about it. It just makes me feel bad, and therefore I can choose to feel good with how I've managed my time. If you're interested in more strategies on how to manage your time, I actually have 3 whole online courses themed around productivity and time management that are hosted on Skillshare. No, they're not sponsoring this video, but if you hit the link in the video description, there'll be a link that gives you a free trial to Skillshare where you can check out my 3 classes on productivity. One of them is about the fundamentals of productivity. One of them is about the productivity equation, which is my personal mental model for productivity. And the third one is one that I released very recently, like last week, around productivity for creators and how we manage our time doing this like creative high side hustle entrepreneur type stuff. So check that out with the links in the video description. And if you want more tips for time management and general productivity, you should check out my book review and summary of the book Make Time, which is one of my favorite productivity books of all time, and that will be linked right over there. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.
Six questions to spark.
Okay. So let's look at some strategies and let's walk through these, similar to some of the content we already seen just then. So practice saying no. We're going to walk through these one by one. How do we say no nicely? So there's saying no, definitely no, 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 can't do it, versus no, not right now. So this is a communication skill that we use in other areas of our life, with being strategic in how we do things, what we say to people, what we don't say to people in relation to helping them or not helping them or delaying helping them related to our time. So no might be harsh. You might not be comfortable with saying no. For me, it's more of no, not right now. Let's plan. I got something planned tomorrow. How about the next day? Probably something this weekend versus next weekend. So it's a comfort level of setting boundaries, but it's also a comfort level in claiming your time and your priorities. Asking help and delegating. So you may be in a position where other people can do certain things for you. There's other people that might be better at something than you, and they can get it done in half the time. So use, for example, painting. If you were looking at painting a room and you had a friend that was very good at painting, invite them over for supper as a reward, as a treat, as a thank you, and then you get the work done a lot quicker, faster, nicer, and the benefit and the trade-off is they get a meal, you get extra help, and you get a better quality. Planning ahead. So once again, planning and being prepared. So things like a grocery list when you go to the grocery store, that's part of planning ahead with this is what I got to pick up. So the more we do that, the more we're not spending time thinking about things, backtracking because we have a good plan, we have a route we're going to take, and that's it. Creating routines. So with routines, of course, it becomes a habit, and all of a sudden we're doing things just because it's a routine. So for some people, it's, when they get up in the morning, the first thing they're going to do is have a cup of coffee and start the day with an activity. It might be watching the news, catching up on things, or it might be a task where you are, going to clean up a little bit. You might have a routine in the nighttime of doing the dishes, putting the dishes away before you go to bed. So these routines can be helpful for managing our time and getting tasks completed. Minimizing distractions. Here we're talking about things like staying on task. Notifications may come on your phone. There might be a desire to check to see what that notification is versus not leave your phone where it's to and focus on what you need to get done versus constantly responding to distractions that erode away the time that you have. Then there's rewarding yourself for tasks that you have completed. You manage time, stayed on task, got something completed. What's the reward for that? Capitalize on your strengths. So there's times, for example, when people are more focused on getting things done. So if you're a morning person, then getting priorities done in the morning versus, no, I'm a night person and I'm more productive in the nighttime. So it's capitalizing on your strengths, on when you stay focused, when you can get things accomplished, and using those things to your benefit. And earlier we talked about perfectionism, that idea of good is good enough versus things got to be perfect. And a lot of people with this tendency tend to do things over and over again, because it's not good enough in their mind. Versus it's good enough for now. Let's get this done. We can come back later on to tidy it up. So in the context of work versus, something as simple as folding towels. There's a right way and a wrong way for a lot of people in terms of doing these things versus no, this way is just as good as any other way. It can't be, it's not a big perfectionism, it's about getting the towels on the towel rack or in the closet at a site, folded up somehow. Make a doable list. So once again, people often refer to a to-do list versus doable list. What am I able to accomplish? What do I need to do? You can look at that from a monthly perspective with a calendar versus a day, week planning. Once again, planning ahead with your doable list and that idea of tomorrow, what am I going to get accomplished? On the weekend, what am I going to get accomplished? If you're traveling somewhere, grocery list, shopping list, those types of things. What are you going to do when you're in a certain part of your town? Okay, I'm going to go get my groceries. I'll also go and pick up my medication because the pharmacy is close by. Self-care in terms of things like a good night's sleep goes a long way in terms of how we manage our time, how well we are in terms of our functioning, how well we are with our health, and the healthier we are mentally, physically, the more able we can use these skills and techniques. Take a break. Sometimes things get overwhelming and you need to take a step back from something because you're no longer being productive and you're wasting your time. Oftentimes when people try to fix something, they often have to take a break because they're getting frustrated with getting something fixed because what they're getting fixed is not solving the problem to get something running again. So oftentimes taking a step back is helpful and going back with a fresh perspective. Avoid multitasking. So multitasking can be not helpful in the context of we can be prone to making errors when we're multitasking. We're not paying attention to something as well as we can. And when that happens, of course, we might make an error and then we need to do something over again. Therefore, we're doubling up the time it takes to get something done because we didn't pay attention in the first time. Tackling the hardest thing first. So that's a strategy that some people use for once I get the hardest thing done, I can do the easier things, and the easier things are more fun. So it's almost like a reward system where the hardest thing is done first, and then you get rewarded by doing the easier things. And they're less strenuous and less emotionally focused. Oftentimes the hardest things is more emotionally draining than physically draining for some people. Tracking your time. So once again, how do we track time? How do we keep logs, journals to look at how we use our time in relation to the day, the week, the month, the year? Setting priorities and sticking to them. And earlier we mentioned, priorities can be a moving target. So what's my priority today? Right now is going to be different 7 o'clock tonight, tomorrow, next week, the weekend. So priorities are often in the context of the hardest thing. So what's important to get done might be the hardest thing versus, no, that's the hardest thing, can wait. I got something more important to do. I need to switch gears and do this first, which can be challenging for people. So let's look at time savers in the context of how do we claim time back by not doing certain things we may historically have been doing. But let's go back to this one. Slow cooker, timer, and the water holes there. So anyone doing any gardening, timer can be very helpful for watering your garden with the soaker holes or some sort of sprinkler system versus you watering your lawn. How long would that take for you watering your garden, your vegetables? Slow cooker are generally very safe. Put stuff in, walk away, come back 3 hours later. You don't need to be standing over the slow cooker as you would if you were on the stove frying something. You would have to watch it and be very vigilant in that. So these two devices can save a lot of time in the context of meal preparation and gardening. Delegating tasks, getting help. So for example, if your partner is out working, coming home from work, drop by the store on the way home, your sister picking up your mail for you because she's picking up her mail and coming to visit you, and children starting to do chores. So if you got children, that's the life skills versus your children doing certain things that you would normally do to free up your time. So very simple, very practical examples of delegating. Earlier, we talked about someone helping you paint your room and that idea of getting the help from others in the context of speeding up the process and them doing a good job. Sometimes big tasks, once again, emotionally drains on us. So we're talking about how time can have an emotional impact on us. So here's a good way of looking at things in relation to time and task in terms of a ladder. Big steps, big rungs are hard to climb. So on the image, the ladder on the left, lots of little rungs, looks really like a lot more work. But if you look at the other side, there's big giant tasks that become so psychologically insurmountable that sometimes we can get stuck. So a ladder with 10 rungs on it versus a ladder with 30 rungs. 10 looks like it's less, 30 looks like it's more, but when we break down tasks, we can get things done quicker. So this is a personal challenge that I did for myself in the context of this presentation. So I looked at in terms of my house needs to be clean, my kitchen needs to be clean, my fridge needs to be clean, the top shelf on my fridge. So that's what I did. That was the smallest task I assigned for myself, and it took me 4 minutes to complete. Now, obviously, if I had to do more to the fridge, it would be the next shelf, the next shelf, the next shelf. So by breaking down small tasks, I was able to complete something that only took 4 minutes versus thinking about cleaning the house. Well, that's going to be days, if not a week in total, to entirely clean my house from top to bottom. So sometimes breaking down tasks gets us to get things done, get things completed, be more productive, and psychologically feel better because of that. And then I did something valuable with my time versus I thought about cleaning the house for 3 hours in total a week, but I cleaned nothing. Visual is often a good thought process, a planning process. A image is very helpful for people to understand and process breaking a task down. So the best example is looking at a roadmap for traveling from, say, St. John's to Port aux Basques to get to ferry. You look at stops along the way. Where are we going to stop to? Are we going to stop Whitburn? Are we going to stop in Clarenville? When between Grand Falls, Windsor, and Deer Lake? That's a long drive, but it's doable for a lot of people. Where do you gas up? Those types of things, how much time it takes to go from one spot to the next. So a visual is often very important for mapping out and planning. So once again, the planning ahead concept in visual form to help with where are we taking the breaks, communicating that plan to other people so there's no disagreement, everyone's on board, and all of a sudden everything is running smoothly, everything is on time. We talked about this earlier, saying no, not right now, and being comfortable with saying no. And once again, that takes practice with people, but if it's done in a nice way, if it's done in a way that other people accept it as, yes, I sprung this on you, I didn't give you any notice, I realize I'm asking a lot of you, yeah, we can do that tomorrow, that's not a problem, no big deal. It enhances the relationship with setting boundaries, but is also claiming our time and honoring our time for what we have that's our priority right now, versus dropping things because it's fun and you're running off doing something else because the task that you wanted to do and should do is a priority, but it's not a fun task. Pairing tasks. So this is somewhat different than multitasking because what we're looking at doing is something that's a time saver by doing two things to one time. It doesn't require anything tremendous. It's not putting anything at risk. So example of this is, people exercising while they're watching TV or listening to something on the radio or a podcast. So here you're doing something that's probably not as fun with something that's a little bit more fun. So folding laundry while watching the news. Of course, the news is on, you're listening, but you're folding. Probably don't even need to look at what you're folding. So you hear the news, get some information, but you've done another task as well with it. Cleaning the dishes while you're boiling water on the stove. So you're in this kitchen, safe, you're hearing the water boil, you're putting away a few dishes. Probably fairly easy to do. Versus waiting for the water to boil while you're doing nothing, versus putting dishes away while you are doing something. Once again, the caution of ineffective multitasking. If you're doing something that's really important, need to pay attention to it, then we suggest not pairing these things together. And this can be helpful for planning new habits and daily routines, as we mentioned earlier. So once again, how do you have your morning coffee and you plan your day? So instead of listening to news or watching something on TV, it's okay, now I got a to-do list for today, or you're reviewing your to-do list that you done the day before for saying, is these things still a priority? Do I need to make some changes on my tasks that I'm doing? So there's times when we have brain overload, lots of things to do. We don't know where to start. So that's where writing things down, making a list, a doable list, the best thing to do right now, what's good use of my time, what do I consider wasting time, and then how do you manage, where do you start? So there are times when we need to reset what the priorities are because we're being overwhelmed somehow in our brain. So there's diagrams, like I said earlier, there's journaling processes that people use versus having that step of, okay, what am I doing now? I don't know what the next step is. I need to slow this down. I need to think, get back to that thinking line on how am I going to accomplish certain things. What's the priority right now versus 2 hours ago was different priority. Things have changed. And this often happens, of course, in stressful situations or when things go wrong that we didn't plan to. So this is part of setting priorities. So it looks at things that are important. So not important versus high important versus urgent not urgent from a time point of view. So for example, here in this office now, should my fire alarm go off, I would have to stop this recording because guess what? The fire alarm is important, it's very time sensitive. I would need to respond to that. Versus there's aspects of our life, like, when we need to pay a bill. So if my rent is due at the end of the month, I got to get my money ready for the end of the month, make sure there's enough there for rent. The second and third of the month, I'm not overly concerned with rent until it gets later and later and closer to rent. So the time sensitivity gets reduced, is not urgent. Other people use income tax returns. Tax season, it's called tax season for a reason. So that's when people get their papers in order for getting their tax returns, getting their taxes done. In May month, no one's really concerned with tax return if they got them done in April. So then there's a full year of, okay, that's not important anymore. Then there's things that need to be renewed that we need to pay attention to, such as our driver's licenses. That's, every 5 years. Some people got passports that can be either 5 years or 10 years. So once again, there's certain things we put on the back burner from a time point of view because it's no longer sensitive, it's not important, versus there's things that become more important and all of a sudden we got to respond to something. So from the squares quadrant point of view, high importance, high urgency is what should be the number one task to complete to occupy your time, versus other times you're going to put as non-urgent, not important, and they can wait for weeks or months sometimes. So we talked about daily planners a fair bit. So there's lots you can buy. There's free things online. Some people go to local libraries and get copies of stuff printed off from the internet, versus some people like little handbooks that they carry with them. Other people, of course, will use things like their apps on their phones, to-do lists, calendars that you can download for free and use those things. So once again, priority setting, to-do lists that can change over time. Some people enjoy ticking off the lists, got things accomplished. Reviewing the day looks at what did I accomplish today? What were the priorities? Did the priorities change? How did I manage my time? So it's a learning process of reflecting on what I did and looking at what am I doing moving forward. Three P's, practice. How do we practice these things? How do we become consistent with our daily routines? That's true persistence and patience. We practice, we learn, we don't give up because something didn't go well for an hour out of the day. It doesn't ruin the full day. It was a blip, and you learn from these things. So next we're going to look at another video in relation to these things. And this is a doctor who's got a lot of very good information. I'm going to mute myself and then I'm going to play the video.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tracy Marks, a psychiatrist, and I make mental health education videos. Today, I'm talking about the things you can do to help your ADHD. And this is a follow-up to a video I did on executive function. In that video, I talk about the different ways ADHD affects your decision-making, your planning abilities, time management, and other tasks. When it comes to non-medication ways to manage your ADHD symptoms, we can break it down into these three domains: time management, organization, and planning. This video is dedicated to time management. People with ADHD typically have trouble estimating how long things will take and adjusting their schedules accordingly. As a result, you may be frequently late to things, or it can even affect your ability to finish things because you don't take into account how long things should take. Also with ADHD, the loss of time is a cumulative effect. You can just lose time to things that you can't even track. So step one to master this time management skill is to have constant access to timepieces. Do you wear a watch? You may say, I don't need a watch because I've got my phone, but you can't always pull your phone out to look at the time. You want your awareness of the time to be a seamless flow because it's always there in your face. If it takes too much effort to know the time, you'll just act without knowing, probably assuming that you're fine with the time. So you want to have a watch on your wrist and clocks on the walls in the rooms where you spend the most time, like the kitchen, bedroom, home office, and bathroom. The watch gives you access when you're in places where there's no clock in easy view, and the clock is for easy view when you don't have your watch on, you're not wearing it for some reason, or you just don't want to lift up your wrist. Have you been late for an appointment because you took a 30-minute shower that you thought was going to be a quick 5 minutes? That's where a bathroom clock is a must. The next step is to estimate the time that it takes for your usual tasks. Knowing how long things take can help you plan your day, leave your home in time for things, and know how much of something that you can complete. Leaving things undone can happen because you get distracted or bored, but it can also be a factor of starting something that will take you more time than you have. And repetitively leaving things undone chips away at your motivation and self-esteem. It's very satisfying to be able to complete something, even if it's a small task. So you want to make a list of your usual tasks, and over the course of a few days, time how long it takes you. Your list may look something like this: getting ready for school or work. And if this task takes you more than an hour, by the way, you should break it down into subtasks to see what takes you the longest, then keep that separate. So it may take you 40 minutes to shower and groom yourself, brush your teeth, comb your hair, etc. Then have a separate task of eating, preparing your lunch, and getting out of the door. Then include things like doing laundry, dishes, other house chores, walking your dog, sorting your mail. Let's say you have a task that you do that you can never seem to do in one sitting, and because of that, you always get behind on it because the unfinished tasks pile up on you. Use this exercise to time the activity and break it down into phases of the task so you can see where the time goes. Here's an example.
David, the movie.
I will not be afraid.
Judy gets anxious thinking about her piles of laundry that she can't get under control. She first estimated that it takes her about 2 hours for the wash and the dry cycle, then maybe another 30 minutes to fold. But at any given time, she has piles of clean clothes in baskets and on a bed in the guest room, and the family goes into the room and gets clothes from the bed. Clothes fall on the floor, get stepped on, and then you can't tell what's clean and what's not. You might say, why can't other people fold those clothes? That's not the point. The point is, in her head, Judy thinks that laundry is this basic task of putting clothes into machines, and it only takes about 2.5 hours. She she could never find a 2.5 hour block of time to do it. So to really see this task through to completion, it was important to break out the different aspects of doing laundry and knowing how long it took to do each of those things. So when she did that, she realized it took 15 minutes to gather all of the clothes from everyone's room and then take them downstairs and put them into the washing machine. It took an hour and a half for the wash and the dryer cycle together. It took anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to fold the clothes and another 10 minutes to put them away. So it takes Judy the initial 15 minutes to gather the laundry, and then after an hour and a half break, it's another 30 minutes to process each load. With her family, there was easily 4 to 5 loads of laundry each week, so folding and putting away could easily take a couple of hours. Knowing this helped Judy plan how she did the laundry, because one of her problems was that she set an unrealistic task for herself to have a day where she does the laundry. That was overwhelming because it was too many steps and she couldn't sustain her attention to the final steps. And this is especially hard when you have to wait an hour and a half to do the next step. So the natural inclination would be to save it for later. Knowing that the second part of the laundry would take a couple of hours allowed her to schedule that as its own thing and then break it into steps. So after she completes the mountain of laundry that sits on the bed, she would then schedule separate times to sort, fold, and put away. Now, this may seem like common sense, and if it does, it's probably because you don't have this problem. But ADHD causes problems with executive functioning, which includes planning, time estimation, and organization. And when you face a task that has multiple steps to it, it's very easy to lose track of the steps and just have them drop off or be left unfinished or poorly finished in a way that causes problems, like not knowing where your clothes are because they're underneath a pile, or your favorite top slipped under the bed after someone stepped on it. And this means it took you an extra 20 minutes in the morning finding your clothes to wear. So this problem with time has a trickle-down effect. And this highlights a point. When you are timing your morning activities, you may have to break out how much time you spend finding clothes to wear. So the time awareness exercise involves 2 parts. The first part is estimating the time for your usual tasks. And you don't want to guess on this. You want to look at your watch and write down the start time and finish time on a time log. Then the second part is to look at the tasks that take you a long time to do and are problematic for you, causing you to be late. Break those down into smaller tasks and then time them. You can use this time log later for planning your day, as well as troubleshooting things that are eating up too much of your time, like the example of spending 15 minutes each morning figuring out what you want to wear or finding clothes. So you can use this list later to reduce some time inefficiencies. The third and final step that I'll talk about in this video is to keep a planner. I suggest 2 different kinds of planners: a daily planner to keep up with your daily activities, and a week at a glance calendar so that you can keep a bird's eye view of what's currently going on in your life and what's coming up in the future. This is something you want to carry with you all the time. It doesn't have to be paper. It can be digital if you're more comfortable using something on your phone. With ADHD, out of sight is out of mind. So if it's not on your planner, it doesn't exist. You don't want to crowd your head with all of the things that you need to remember to do. If you happen to remember, great, but you don't want the burden of needing to remember. Because with ADHD, mental clutter gets purged without your knowledge. Your brain just lets go of it for you. And the information is gone until someone reminds you of what you missed. You want your planner to include appointments and tasks. Now that you know how long things will take, you can avoid having things overlap each other. You want to look at your planner at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. You look at it at the beginning of the day to get an overview of what you've got to do for the day. And then you want to look at it at the end of the day to see what things were left unfinished and what you've got going on the next day. If there are things that you didn't complete, You want to move that task to another time slot, and that could be the next day or it could be several days down the road. If you notice a pattern of certain things that you never seem to finish in the time that you thought you should, that can be a task that you break down into subtasks and assign those as separate things for your to-do list. So this may seem like a lot of work to get all of this going. When tasks seem too overwhelming to start, it means that the task is too big, so you break it down into parts. So I'll break down what I've talked about in this video into parts. Start with getting a watch and having an adequate number of clocks visible to you in areas where you spend time. Then create your time log using your watch and your clocks. This may take you several days to do. And start with the big things that you do, like getting ready for work, chores, eating dinner, getting ready for bed. And this list can also include things that you do at work so you can have a better understanding of how you use your time at work. And this is to help you appreciate time. Lastly, you get a daily planner and either a weekly or monthly planner. You're going to use the daily planner to track your appointments, obligations, and your to-do list. And you're going to consult the planner twice a day. In the morning to appreciate the scope of your day, and in the evening to reflect on how your day transpired and review what you've got going on tomorrow. It also gives you a chance to reschedule things that you didn't complete. Okay, thanks for watching. I hope this is helpful for you. Go improve your time awareness and then come back later to hear about how to follow through with difficult tasks. Stay tuned.
That video touched on several points that was explored through today. The latter, for example, the breaking down tasks, looking at morning planning, reviewing how the day went later in the afternoon or the evening, and then looking at planning for tomorrow. So with that, we will look at some resources in the concept of mindfulness and Mind Well You. It's very helpful in relation to time management, for being able to be mindful and stay in the moment, not get distracted, not get too far ahead about worried about the future versus what was happening in the past. So that's very helpful in the concept of looking at time management and tracking time and being aware of things. The Therapy Assist Online has some more resources there in terms of SMART goals and time management. Then there's short programs for understanding depression, de-stressing. It's again what our brains get caught up with versus on time and our motivation to do certain things. Then we have depression and anxiety programs to help with people managing aspects of their mental health and wellness. LifeWise for peer support, Doorway services if people want to look at some individual support one-on-one, and Bridge the Gap for Knowledge Center to look at other aspects of your life that may impact your time management processes. So for today, we're going to conclude with what part of this session today did you think was most helpful for you? Thought process on getting a calendar or using your phone for planning certain things, setting reminders, to-do lists, and one thing you would like to look at committing to trying, whether it's planning this afternoon, this evening, for what you're going to do tomorrow, or if you're looking at this early in the morning, looking at what am I going to do the rest of the day? What's the priority? How much time am I going to set aside for doing a task and seeing if this gets completed or not? So with that, I thank you for your time, and you can visit other recordings for other mental health strategies you might want to consider.